All right, my fellow philosophers, today we are going to be going over Seneca's letter to Lucilius, letter 9, which is on philosophy and friendship, and we're just going to jump right into this here. He says in verse 1, "You desire to know whether Epicurus is right in one of his letters. He rebukes those who hold that a wise man is self-sufficient and for that reason does not stand in need of friendships. This is the objection raised by Epicurus against Stilbo and those who believe that the supreme good is a soul which is insensible to feeling." Okay, so I mean, basically, he's opening the letter by addressing this thing. So Epicurus said that, or basically, he rebuked people that said that a wise man is self-sufficient. He doesn't need friends. And Epicurus said, no, that's not the case. All right, and so let's find out what he said about that. And he said here that this is the objection raised by Epicurus against Stilbo and those who believe that the supreme good is a soul which is insensible to feeling. So this is an interesting statement too, that the supreme good is a soul which is insensible to feeling. All right, this would be the idea that you don't, Stoicism gets accused of saying that you don't need to have emotions, which is not true. But this is the extreme of that, right? Which is they're talking about here. So in verse 2, he says, "We are bound to meet with double meaning if we try to express the Greek term lack of feeling summarily in a single word, rendering it by the Latin impatientia. For it may be understood in the meaning the opposite of that which we wish to have. What we mean to express is a soul which rejects any sensation of evil, but people will interpret the idea as that of a soul which can endure no evil. Consider, therefore, whether it is not better to say, quote, a soul that cannot be harmed, or, quote, a soul entirely beyond the realm of suffering." So this is interesting, all right? And there's a few things here, to break this down a little bit here, right? So there's a Greek term here that he's using that because he's sort of translating what Epicurus says, right? And so he's trying to really break this down, and he's saying that the Latin word, okay, is impatientia, and so the meaning that he's saying is that it's actually the opposite of what we wish to have here, which is he's saying that what we mean to express is a soul that rejects any sensation of evil, okay, but he's saying people will interpret the idea of that as a soul which can endure no evil. Okay, so basically, and this is a really important distinction, because if you have a soul which rejects any sensation of evil, okay, that doesn't mean that that there's no evil, that's not dealing with evil, right? Again, that's why maybe you would be in isolation as a philosopher and not have friends, is because other people will corrupt that, right? So he's saying, so which is better? Is it to say a soul that cannot be harmed, okay, or a soul entirely beyond the realm of suffering? So what do you think? Which is which is more important? Okay, form your own opinion on this before we move forward. I mean, which one would you say is better? Is it better to have a soul that cannot be harmed, or a soul entirely beyond the realm of suffering? Right? And this is something to just think about before we move on here, because a soul that cannot be harmed is a pretty good thing, right? I mean, that means that no matter what, you don't allow yourself to be harmed. But then if you say a soul entirely beyond the realm of suffering, that's also a pretty good thing. It seems like a soul entirely beyond the realm of suffering. So you can't even be caused to suffer because you're at such a high level, a high plane, a high level of awareness. But let's go on to see what he has to say about it. In verse 3, he says, there is this difference between ourselves and the other school. Talking about Epicurus. Our ideal wise man feels his troubles, but overcomes them. Okay, so he's saying in the Stoic philosophy, our ideal wise man, he feels the troubles, but is able to overcome them. All right, their wise man does not even feel them. But we and they are alike in this idea that the wise man is self-sufficient. Nevertheless, he desires friends, neighbors, and associates, no matter how much he is sufficient unto himself. Okay, so he's making a pretty good argument here. He's saying, look, this is what they believe. They believe, all right, that a wise man doesn't even feel the troubles. Okay, that he would need to be beyond even feeling them. And if we really think about that, I mean, it seems good. And I think that, as I've worked on developing myself in my character and my emotional control and just my mindset, I found that a lot of things that used to trouble me don't even trouble me at all, right? So it is true that that is a good goal to strive for, okay? The wise man doesn't even feel the troubles, right? And I think as you expand your awareness and you start to drop your expectations on the world and life, that there are less things that bother you, that trouble you. I think that is a good goal. But he's saying that for the Stoics, what is important to them is that a wise man still feels the troubles but overcomes them, that idea of overcoming them. And personally, I think that both. I think that if you're constantly overcoming your troubles, then you're going to get to a point where you're expanding your knowledge and your wisdom to a point where you don't feel the troubles as much. But it's unrealistic to think that you would never feel the troubles. And then what value really is that? The big value is, as a Stoic, because think of it this way, right? Let's suppose that you don't feel troubles, but then you don't have any way of overcoming those troubles. You're not equipped to do that. Then what's going to happen when you do face a trouble that you do feel? Well, you're going to be in trouble, right? Because you're not going to be able to deal with it. However, if you're a person who can feel things, who can feel the emotions, who can feel the troubles, who can feel maybe some anger or negative emotion, and then deal with those things and overcome those things, right? Then that's pretty powerful. And what he's saying here at the end is he's saying, look, here's the thing. Okay, this is what we both agree to. The wise man's self-sufficient. However, what Seneca's saying is he's saying he doesn't need friends, but he desires them. Friends, neighbors, associates. No matter how sufficient he is unto himself, he still can desire those things. He doesn't need them. He is self-sufficient. However, he can want those things, and that's fine. In verse 4, he says, "And mark how self-sufficient he is, for on occasion he can be content with a part of himself. If he lose a hand through disease or war, or if some accident puts out one or both of his eyes, he will be satisfied with what is left, taking as much pleasure in his impaired and maimed body as he took when it was sound. But while he does not pine for these parts if they are missing, he prefers not to lose them." Okay? And so this is, again, just a way of describing what self-sufficiency is, right? He's using this because we're talking about friendships and needing other people, but he's saying that, this is really what a self-sufficient man is. A self-sufficient man is someone that he can be content with only a part of himself, right? So if he loses a hand or, puts out one or both of his eyes, he can be satisfied with what's left, taking just as much pleasure in his impaired and maimed body as he took when it was sound. Now, that's powerful stuff, right? Could you do this, right? This is kind of the ultimate test of being self-sufficient. And this is really a good thing to think about in life because, man, you're going to get older. Like, stuff's going to happen to you, stuff that's going to be outside of your control. If you're good looking, your looks will fade at times. There's going to be things that are going to happen. You might lose your hair, stuff that is to a large degree outside of your control. And so the question is, will you then not be happy? Will not be satisfied, right? Are you satisfied because of the things that are outside of your control, which you have, or the things that are inside your control, right? And so, and he's saying here that it's not like, that you should prefer to lose them. You prefer not to lose them, but hey, if they're missing, if something happens, then you're not going to pine for that. You're not going to regret that. You're not going to say, "Oh, I wish I had this." So think about that, In verse 5, he says, "In this sense, the wise man is self-sufficient, that he can do without friends, not that he desires to do without them." When I say, quote, "can," I mean this: he endures the loss of a friend with equanimity. All right, so he's saying here again, in the same way, a wise man, he can do without friends. He doesn't need them. He doesn't desire to do without them because friends are good. Why not have it? But if he loses a friend, he can do that without a huge amount of despair. But he need never lack friends, for it lies in his own control how soon he shall make good a loss. But he need never lack friends, for it lies in his own control how soon he shall make good a loss. Okay? So what he's saying here is that when he doesn't have friends, he doesn't have to lack them because he can decide how quickly he can turn a loss into a good, where he's no longer suffering the loss. Just as Phidias, if he lose a statue, can straightway carve another. Even so, our master in the art of making friendships can fill the place of a friend he has lost. So, hey, you could become good at making friends, and then you don't have to worry about this because, yeah, it sucks to lose a friend, but you can make a new friend, right? Verse 6, if you ask how one can make oneself a friend quickly, I will tell you, provided we agree that I may pay my debt at once and square the account. So as far as this letter is concerned. So, he plays this little thing with the letter about that he owes something. And so he's saying, this is the payment. All right. Hikato says, quote, I can show you a philtre compounded with drugs, herbs, or any witch's incantation. If you would be loved, love. Okay, so this quote, what does this mean? Do we even need to know what a philtre is? It's some kind of potion, some kind of thing, right? That's going to produce a result. Okay, that's you can just infer that from the text, but we could look it up if you want to. Let's just see how close we are to that. And this is how to decipher some of these texts. You don't have to know every single word, right? Like I don't know what this is. It is a drink. See, a drink is supposed to arouse love and desire for a particular person. So okay, so I pretty much guessed it, right? All right. So if you would be loved, love. Simple. Okay. Now, there is great pleasure not only in maintaining old and established friends, but also in beginning and acquiring new ones. Okay. In verse 7, he says, there is the same difference between winning a new friend and having already won him as there is between the farmer who sows and the farmer who reaps. Okay. So let's think about what's the difference between the farmer who sows and the farmer who reaps. Let's see. The farmer who sows, well, he doesn't have the thing yet, and the farmer who reaps is getting the thing that he sowed. Okay, so he's saying the same difference between winning a new friend and having already won him. So winning a new friend is probably like sowing, and reaping is sort of like already won him. Okay, so what is that difference? The philosopher Attalus used to say, it is more pleasant to make than to keep a friend, as it is more pleasant to the artist to paint than to have finished painting. Okay, so he's making the case that it's good to make new friends, right? That there's a lot of pleasure in that, not just maintaining old friends. When one is busy and absorbed in one's work, the very absorption affords great delight. But when one has withdrawn one's hands from the completed masterpiece, the pleasure is not so keen. Henceforth, it is the fruits of his art that he enjoys. It is the art itself that he enjoyed while he was painting. In the case of our children, their young manhood yields the more abundant fruits, but their infancy was sweeter. Okay, so he's just making the comparison here about friendships and saying that just like an artist, they enjoy the painting. You shouldn't be just holding on to your friends that you have. It's actually a lot more fun to make new friends. It's actually more exciting, right? That's what he's saying here. Verse 8, now let us return to the question. The wise man, I say, self-sufficient though he be, nevertheless desires friends, if only for the purpose of practicing friendship, in order that his noble qualities may not lie dormant. Not, however, for the purpose mentioned by Epicurus in the letter quoted above. Quote, that there may be someone to sit by him when he is ill, to help him when he is in prison or in want, but that he may have someone by whose sickbed he himself may sit, someone a prisoner in hostile hands whom he himself may set free. He who regards himself only and enters upon friendship for this reason reckons wrongly. The end will be like the beginning. He has made friends with one who might assist him out of bondage. At the first rattle of the chain, such a friend will desert him. So here's where he's kind of rebuking Epicurus, right? He's saying, look, the thing about this is you could be self-sufficient, that's fine. But you should have friends so you can practice your friendship, your nobility, the qualities that you have, that they shouldn't need to lie dormant, right? Now he's saying here that Epicurus is saying, look, you should have friends so that when you're sick and when you need some help, that someone's around. It sucks to not have friends and to be alone. And Seneca's like, no, you got it wrong, man. Because I'll tell you why. Because friends like that you have around because you need something from them, because you don't want to be lonely, as soon as there's trouble, they're going to flee. The kind of friends that you need to have are the friends that for you to be around, for you to help, for you to be able to practice these things, this compassion that you can give. Those are going to be the true friends. And those people will stick around when you get into trouble. But that's not the point of it. That's not the point of it. In verse 9, he says, these are so-called fair weather friendships. One who is chosen for the sake of utility will be satisfactory only as long as he is useful. Hence, prosperous men are blockaded by troops of friends, but those who have failed stand amid vast loneliness. Their friends fleeing from the very crisis, which is to test their worth. Hence, also, we notice those many shameful cases of persons who, through fear, desert or betray. The beginning and the end cannot but harmonize. He who begins to be your friend because it pays will also cease because it pays. Or in this case, it does not pay. A man will be attracted by some reward offered in exchange for his friendship if he be attracted by aught in friendship other than friendship itself. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. There's quite a few things here, but it's really saying the same thing here. Okay, so he's saying that these are the fair weather friendships. Okay, if you choose a friend for the sake of utility, he's only gonna be around as long as he's useful. Okay, prosperous men are blockaded by troops of friends, but those who have failed stand amid vast loneliness. So when you're doing good, you're going to have a lot of friends. But when you fail, everybody disappears. Their friends fleeing from the very crisis, which is to test their worth. Okay? Hence, also, we notice these many shameful cases of persons who, through fear, desert or betray. So he's saying if you have these kind of fair weather friends, if you're getting friends for their usefulness, yeah, when you're doing good, they're going to be around. But as soon as trouble hits, they're going to be gone. All right? The beginning and the end cannot but harmonize. So if someone begins becoming your friend, okay, because it pays, then if it pays to not be your friend, then he won't be your friend. Or if it doesn't pay to be your friend anymore, he won't be your friend. So this is the reason to avoid those kind of friendships. All right. So in verse 10, he says, "For what purpose then do I make a man my friend? In order to have someone for whom I may die, whom I may follow in exile against those whose death I may stake my own life and pay the pledge to. The friendship which you portray is a bargain and not a friendship. It regards convenience only and looks to the results." So what is he saying here? It's a hard road. What he's saying, his path. What he's really saying here is that why should you have a friend? Well, for someone that you could die for someone you could follow into exile, who you could stake your own life. Right. And so the idea that he's saying of friendship is that it's not a bargain. OK, it's not convenience. You're not just looking to the results. You're taking on someone as a friend because it's someone that you trust and you want to help. You want to be there for. It's not about you. It's about them. That's what it should be. That's what the focus of any relationship, friendship, relationship, romantic relationship should be. It should be on them, not on you. Right? If you're using them for you to be loved, to have someone there for you, it's a problem, right? And it will exhibit, it will show itself. In verse 11, he says, "Beyond question, the feeling of love has in it something akin to friendship. One might call it friendship run mad." So he's getting right to what I just said. "But though this is true, does anyone love for the sake of gain or promotion or renown? Pure love, careless of all other things, kindles the soul with desire for the beautiful object, not without the hope of a return of the affection. What then? Can a cause which is more honorable produce a passion that is base?" Okay, so he's kind of getting to that point here, right? So beyond question, the feeling of a lover has in it something akin to friendship. So loving is kind of like friendship. One might call it friendship run mad. Okay, so it's a very similar thing, but an more extreme version. "But though this is true, does anyone love for the sake of gain or promotion or renown?" Right? So do you love someone because of what you can get from them? Is that true? He says, "Pure love, careless of all other things, kindles the soul with the desire for the beautiful object, not without the hope of a return of the affection." So when you love someone, when you have a desire for that person or that thing, and you do have the hope of a return of affection. What then? He says, can a cause which is more honorable produce a passion that is base? So is love more honorable, but then it's not as good as a friendship because you're kind of doing it for the wrong reason? That's how I interpret this. And verse 12, he says, "You may retort, quote, we are not now discussing the question whether friendship is to be cultivated for its own sake. On the contrary, nothing more urgently requires demonstration. For if friendship is to be sought for its own sake, he may seek it who is self-sufficient. How then, do you ask, does he seek it? Precisely as he seeks an object of great beauty, not attracted to it by the desire for gain, nor yet frightened by the instability of fortune. One who seeks friendship for favorable occasions strips it of all its nobility. So now he's comparing it to love, right? And he's like, okay, look, up here, you know that you don't love someone because of the gain. So if you seek friendship in the same way, then you're also going to be doomed. It will make it ignoble, right? So you should seek it not because of what you can get from it. All right. If you seek friendship for favorable occasions, it strips it of all the nobility. It's meaningless. In verse 13, he says, the wise man is self-sufficient. This phrase, my dear Lucilius, is incorrectly explained by many, for they withdraw the wise man from the world and force him to dwell within his own skin. But we must mark with care what this sentence signifies and how far it applies. The wise man is sufficient unto himself for a happy existence, but not for mere existence. For he needs many help towards mere existence. But for a happy existence, he needs only a sound and upright soul, one that despises fortune. All right, so again, breaking this down, the wise man is self-sufficient, okay? He says people explain this wrong, all right? And they force him to be on his own, which is not true. Okay, so what does it actually mean? He says the wise man is sufficient unto himself for a happy existence, but not for mere existence. So a wise man is self-sufficient in the sense that he can be happy by himself. It does not mean that he does not need other people in order to actually live, okay? So he's saying he needs many help towards mere existence. I mean, think about it. You're not going to just go off into the woods by yourself. You do need some help. You do need, I mean, maybe you could survive on your own, but it's very unlikely, especially in society today. But for a happy existence, you don't need anyone. You can just be happy, right? All you have to do is despise fortune. All right. In verse 14, he says, I should like also to state to you one of the distinctions of Chrysippus, who declares that the wise man is in want of nothing and yet needs many things. Interesting. On the other hand, he says, nothing is needed by the fool, for he does not understand how to use anything, but he is in want of everything. The wise man needs hands, eyes, and many things that are necessary for his daily use, but he is in want of nothing, for want implies a necessity, and nothing is necessary to the wise man. So this is really interesting. Okay, breaking this down. So he's quoting Chrysippus, okay, Chrysippus, I guess, who declares that a wise man is want of nothing, yet needs many things. So he doesn't want anything, all right? Whereas a fool doesn't need anything because he doesn't know how to use the things, but he's in want of everything. So then he's saying that the wise man needs hands, eyes, many things that are necessary for his daily use. Okay, so he's not dumb enough to think that he's completely self-sufficient in the basic necessities, but he's in want of nothing. For want implies a necessity, and nothing is necessary to the wise man. So this is a little confusing, right? Because need and necessity are being used here. All right, and so what he's saying is that this want is something that someone feels that they need to have that they don't have already. All right. Whereas the wise man is in want of nothing, yet he needs the many things. He needs the things that he has. There are things that he knows that he needs to sustain himself. Okay. So this is a little bit hard to understand, but the basic idea of this is that contrast between the wise man and the fool. Right. The wise man, he recognizes that he needs these things in order to survive, but he doesn't want things that he doesn't have. He doesn't have these wants. But the fool, he doesn't recognize what he actually needs, but he wants a lot of stuff, everything. In verse 15, he says, therefore, although he is self-sufficient, yet he has need of friends. He craves as many friends as possible, not, however, that he may live happily, for he will live happily even without friends. The supreme good calls for no practical aids from outside. It is developed at home and arises entirely within itself. If the good seeks any portion of itself from without, it begins to be subject to the play of fortune. Okay, this is a hard one. So, wise man, he's self-sufficient, right? He has need of friends. Okay, when we're using the word need here, and this is, to understand, it means use. It means that the friends that they can be useful, right? Again, and it doesn't mean to use friends. It means that he can have those friends, that they can be of use to him. And he needs those friends. Why? In order to practice his virtue, in order to practice what he's saying. Okay, so he's saying that he craves as many friends as possible, not so that he can be happy. He wants to have friends. Why? So he can die for them. Okay, I know this sounds weird, but this is the truth of it, right? So that you can be of service, not so he can be happy. He can be happy without friends, and this is the most important thing. The supreme good calls for no practical aids from the outside. All right. So if good seeks any portion of itself from without, it begins to be subject to the play of fortune. So as soon as you need something outside of yourself in order to be happy, to have tranquility, to have peace, you have now subject yourself to fortune, and you've lost it. You're no longer self-sufficient. In verse 16, he says, people may say, but what sort of existence will the wise man have if he be left friendless when thrown into prison, or when stranded in some foreign nation, or when delayed on a long voyage, or when cast upon a lonely shore? His life will be like that of Jupiter, who, amid the dissolution of the world, when the gods are confounded together and nature rests for a space from her work, can retire into himself and give himself over to his own thoughts. In some such way as this, the sage will act. He will retreat into himself and live with himself. So breaking this one down. What sort of existence will a wise man have if he be left friendless and thrown into prison, or when stranded in some foreign nation, or when delayed a long voyage, or when cast upon a lonely shore? So what's going to happen when the wise man doesn't have friends? Well, he's saying his life will be like that of Jupiter, okay? And in the story of Jupiter, in the mythology, the world was dissolved, and in Jupiter was alone, okay? But he's saying that this wise man, he can just retire into himself and his own thoughts, and that's the way that the sage will act. He'll retreat into himself and live within himself. So it's not a problem. He's okay. Okay, it's not preferable, but it's okay. In verse 17, as long as he is allowed to order his affairs according to his judgment, he is self-sufficient, and marries a wife, he is self-sufficient, and brings up children, he is self-sufficient, and yet could not live if he had to live without the society of man. Natural promptings and not his own selfish needs draw him into friendships. For just as other things have for us an inherent attractiveness, so has friendship. As we hate solitude and crave society, as nature draws men to each other, so in this matter also there is an attraction which makes us desirous of friendships. Okay, so again, we'll break this one down. Oh, I wasn't showing you the verse. Okay. As long as he is allowed to order his affairs to his judgment, he's self-sufficient. And marries a wife, he's still self-sufficient. And brings up children, he's self-sufficient. So if he can do what he wants to do, if he has the power to do that, then he's self-sufficient. And yet could not live if he had to live without society or man. So as long as he can do these things, and you can recognize that it would be, you would not be able to live without society, without other people. You depend on them for a lot of things. Okay, that doesn't make him not self-sufficient. And then he's saying that the natural promptings. Okay, it's just natural to want to have friends. All right, not because you need something from them, but that's fine. All right. And so we hate solitude. We crave society. Okay, so nature draws us to each other. It's a natural thing, and so that is what makes someone desirous of friendship. Not what they're going to get, or not that they need that in order to be happy, but it is just what we desire. What is good to us. Okay, in verse 18 he says, nevertheless, though the sage may love his friends dearly, often comparing them with himself and putting them ahead of himself, yet all the good will be limited to his own being, and he will speak the words which were spoken by the very Stilbo, whom Epicurus criticizes in his letter. For Stilbo, after his country was captured and his children and his wife lost, he emerged from the general desolation alone and yet happy. Spoke as follows to Demetrius, called sacker of cities, because of the destruction he brought upon them. In answer to the question whether he had lost everything, quote, I have all my goods with me. Okay, so this is a pretty tall order here. He's saying, a sage or wise man may lose his friends dearly, often comparing them. May love his friends dearly, often comparing them with himself and putting them ahead of himself. Yet, if he loses everything, he will say he's lost nothing. So the idea behind this is there is no such thing as loss, not from the external. You cannot truly lose. You can lose your friends, you can lose your family, you can lose your children, right? but what Stilbo was saying in this case is that I still have my goods with me, all my goods with me. So, and the reason for this, and this is a very hard teaching, okay? It's very hard to understand this, and it isn't ideal, okay? So it's very hard to attain this. But if you are truly disconnected from the external, where your happiness does not depend on something outside of itself, okay, outside of yourself, then it really doesn't matter what you lose. Even if you have close friends, even if you have people that you love, if you lose them, you have lost nothing, because all the real good is within inside you, okay? And if you disagree with this, then it means that you are connected to the external, and you are valuing the outside, which is something that is outside of your control, and it ensures that you can never be truly happy. So, again, this is hard because most people would disagree with this. However, don't think about how you feel about this. Think about what makes sense here. Does it make sense that a wise man who is self-sufficient, who is stoic, who is happy within himself, that he would count whatever happens externally, whatever friendships or family or people that he loves loses, that it's not a loss? He would count that, right? That is true. It's very hard, but it is true. That's what he's saying here. So again, it's something that we aspire to, and it doesn't mean being cold and heartless. You still care. The point is that you care about these things, but you don't allow it to affect you internally in the sense of that you don't depend on those things. Okay, that's the difficulty in this, and it is a very hard thing, and it is something that requires a lot of thinking and practice in order to start to exercise in your life. In verse 19, he says, "There is a brave and stout-hearted man for you. The enemy conquered, but Stilbo conquered his conqueror. I have lost nothing. He forced Demetrius to wonder whether he himself had conquered after all. My goods are all with me." In other words, he deemed nothing that might be taken from him to be a good. Okay, so that's the key point. He deemed nothing that may be taken from him to be a good. So anything that is taken from you, you cannot consider a good. And that's hard. It's really hard. But it's correct. Because if you consider it a good, it can be taken from you. You can be disrupted, right? You have to really think about what is it that cannot be taken from you. That's where your goods are. That's what's valuable in your life. Not to say that you don't love people or care for people or be a good friend to people, of course. However, it is the right thing. We marvel at certain animals because they can pass through fire and suffer no bodily harm, but how much more marvelous is a man who has marched forth unhurt and unscathed through fire and sword and devastations. Do you understand now how much easier it is to conquer a whole tribe than to conquer one man? This saying of Stilbo makes common ground with Stoicism. The Stoic also can carry his goods unimpaired through cities that have been burned to ashes, for he is self-sufficient. Such are the bounds which he sets to his own happiness. So he's saying how amazing is it as a person that can go through everything, to have everything taken from them, to be destroyed, to go through desolation, and have lost nothing, unscathed, to be not damaged in any way by that. All right? He's saying that's what a self-sufficient man is. And he's saying these are the bounds to which he sets to his own happiness. If you are committed to this life of Stoicism, if you truly believe Stoic philosophy, if you're committed to a life of happiness, we could call it tranquility, of inner peace and joy, then you do have to disconnect from all of these things, in the sense that you have to be able to be in a place where no matter what is taken from you, you can't consider anything that can be taken from you a good, which is a really hard thing. Okay? It's very hard, but it is what causes suffering and misery in life. Because you hold on to the things that are external, they cause you pain. They cause you the pain of desiring the things that you don't have. They cause you the pain of fearing you'll lose the things that you do have. They cause you the pain of not having the things the way that you want them. In verse 20, he says, "But you must not think that our school alone can utter noble words." Epicurus himself, the reveler of Stilbo, spoke similar language. So he didn't like Stilbo, okay? "Put it down to my credit, though I have already wiped out my debt for this present day." He says, "Whoever does not regard what he has as most ample wealth is unhappy, though he be the master of the whole world." Or, if the following seems to you a more suitable phrase, for we must try to render the meaning and not the mere words, quote, "A man may rule the world and still be unhappy if he does not feel that he is supremely happy." Okay, so 2 quotes from Epicurus here, right? The first one, he said, "Whoever does not regard what he has as most ample wealth is unhappy, though he be master of the whole world." So it doesn't matter what you have. If you don't regard what you have as ample wealth, as you don't need any more, then you're going to be unhappy no matter if you even have the whole world, okay? And nothing will be enough for you. And then he just says it in a different way. "A man may rule the world and still be unhappy if he does not feel that he is supremely happy." Kind of seems a contradiction. So you can be in charge of the whole world. You can have everything and be unhappy if you do not feel that you're supremely happy. It doesn't. The thing won't get you the thing. In verse 21, he says, "In order, however, that you may know that these sentiments are universal, suggested, of course, by nature, you will find in one of the comic poets this verse." So he quotes one of the poets. "Unblessed is he who thinks himself unblessed." Again, that same sort of contradiction. "Unblessed is he who thinks himself unblessed." True, right? That's all that it takes. "For what does your condition matter if it is bad in your own eyes?" And that's the key to this. What does your condition matter if it's bad in your own eyes? It doesn't matter. You think that it's the external. You think that it's what you have or what you get or what happens to you or what someone does for you that makes you happy. And it's not. It matters. Those things don't matter. It matters how you view it. So it's about your viewpoint. It's about your optimism. It's about your viewpoint of everything in your circumstances. If you view them in a positive light, then they're great. If you view them in a negative light, it doesn't matter how good they are to other people. Verse 22, he says, "You may say, what then? If yonder man rich by base means and yonder man lord of many but slave of more shall call themselves happy, will their own opinion make them happy?" If someone who's in a slave and is not in a good place, if they think that they're happy, does that actually make them happy? He says, "It matters not what one says, but what one feels. Also, not how one feels on one particular day, but how one feels at all times. There is no reason, however, why you should fear that this great privilege will fall into unworthy hands. Only the wise man is pleased with his own. Folly is ever troubled with the weariness of itself. Farewell." So he says here, look, here's the thing. You might think, oh, well, can some idiot just be happy? No. Some idiot can't just be happy, because the fact that he is an idiot, the fact that he is not wise, that he hasn't figured these things out and committed himself to learning these things, is going to make him unhappy. You're going to be constantly troubled with your own mind, with your own shortcomings. But if you're a wise man, if you gain that wisdom, then you can be pleased. You can be pleased with yourself, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. I'll see you tomorrow.